Welcome into the Blurred Wire. So very well, I guess it wasn't that much recently. But Deadpool and Wolverine has been killing the box office and has become the second billion-dollar hit of this year. So we decided we're going to take a second to talk about the first billion-dollar hit of this year. And I think this has to be, I mean, to me, it's the most surprising billion-dollar hit in a long time because we
Mhm.
knew Deadpool and Wolverine was going to gross $1 billion based upon like the ticket sales, the way the trailer that came out during the Super Bowl like broke the internet for a little bit. So like it wasn't that hard that to predict that Deadpool and Wolverine was going to gross $1 billion. It
Right.
kind of became like if it didn't gross a billion, it was going to be a disappointment, right?
hmm Right.
And so, of course, we are talking about Inside Out 2, which ended up
Mhm.
grossing $1.65 billion. I think that number is right. It's a 1.6 $1.65 billion at the box office. Um, I was not planning on going to see it in theaters because, I was like, I saw the first one and I liked it. I thought it was great. But I was like, this doesn't really feel like a movie I need to see in a theater. Like, I'll just wait till it comes out on streaming and I'll just watch it then.
hmm
Man, was I wrong. If you didn't get a chance to see this in theaters, if you got dollar theaters nearby you, go try because it is worth it. It is like I feel like it's different seeing it in a theater. And I was not expecting to like it so much. But I'm pretty sure it's on my list of the top five movies of the year, which I
Oh,
was really not expecting at all.
wow.
Yeah. So, the basic concept of Inside Out is like watching your emotions, like, kind of control your mind and like how your emotions dictate the different actions that you do. And of course, it follows the life of this teenage girl named Riley Anderson. So the first one is all about her not being able to adjust to their move to San Francisco, wanting to go back to Minnesota, and she's struggling with a lot of those classic, tween kind of things.
hmm
And that one came out back in 2015. So when they announced they were doing a second one, it's kind of surprising because this one's coming out literally 9 years later with
Mm.
so like a lot of the kids that maybe saw Inside Out the first one, they're like grown up now. You know what I mean? Like if you're doing an animated movie, typically you want them to come out like doing a sequel to it. You want them to come out right behind each other so that way those kids can still relate to it and like they can grow up older with the movie.
Right.
But in this case, like if you were the same age as Riley when that one came out, you're 18 years old now when this one came
hmm
out, right? So like
hmm
it's very different.
Yeah.
However, it was still amazing. Like I was not expecting to feel like that many emotions in the movie, and I think
hmm
just the way they depicted anxiety was there are so many people out there who don't have anxiety that now they know what it's like. Because like
hmm
I don't have anxiety at all. I'm
hmm
just one of those people I kind of feel like everything's going to work out, and I usually don't freak out over stuff unless it's music. And even then, I really don't freak out very much. Like
hmm
I'm just not wired that way. And I think that's what I realized like watching this movie that like I am just not wired that way and some people are wired that way. And
hmm
it's like I was talking to my friend and he was like, "Oh, so that's what anxiety is like." Like when he was
hmm
watching the way that she like took over the keyboard and was like doing all these things for Riley just to try to make sure that she'll make the team and make friends and all these future plans and stuff. And he was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I had no idea that's what it's like." And his wife was like, "I keep trying to tell you." Um,
hmm
because even my wife, she'll say things all the time, and I'm like, or she'll think things, and I'm like, how did your brain get to that
Get to
point?
that
Like,
point.
how did it
hmm
get so like so overthinking and like negative and like worrying about? It's just one of those things that like you'll never really get unless you have it. You can do your best to listen, and talk to people if you know someone close to you that has really bad anxiety, and they can try to
hmm
explain it to you, but you won't get it unless you have it or unless you watch Inside Out 2. Or, I mean, you
So,
still won't get it completely,
or
but
I
it'll
guess
help.
if, or maybe if you're able to just listen more to your friends with anxiety,
I mean, that too. Yeah.
if you
Yeah.
can understand them.
Mhm,
I definitely think so. Yeah, I really enjoyed this movie as somebody who has bad anxiety at times, and who has had a few panic attacks in my life, it felt very I really enjoyed the depiction of anxiety. Like there were
Mhm.
very many moments with Maya Hawke's performance that I just felt like, oh yeah, no, I've exactly this is like exactly where I have been at times. And I loved, especially, I guess, spoiler alert, um at the end, how they depict the anxiety attack itself,
Mhm.
how like paralyzing it is, not just on Riley's side, but the depiction of the anxiety kind of running wild in that moment was, oh my God, it had me crying in the theater, because it was
Mhm.
just like, dude, that was me. Like that was exactly me. And I think back, and this is one of those movies that I don't have kids, but this is one of those that I would be so excited to show my kids. Not just because I think it's a funny or entertaining movie, but I think
Mhm.
that the depiction and the lesson that can be learned from it is so well told, so accessible to anyone, regardless of if they share that experience or not. And I think it's so important too,
Mhm.
whether that's an experience for you, or it can help you understand a friend later down in life. Like that's a message that I think really matters. And it's a great movie. I'm a
Yeah,
little I'm
no.
a little
Yeah.
biased, blinded by that, because that's what I always keep coming back to when I think of this
Mhm.
movie, but is really good.
Oh yeah, no, I completely agree. And I feel like it's the kind of movie where like if I had young kids right now who were like 2 or 3, I would even wait until they turned like 9 or 10 to show them this movie. Like I wouldn't want to show it to them early because I'd want to make sure that like it doesn't become like, oh, that was just a kids movie I saw like in the past. Like I would want them to
Mhm.
remember it as part of their formative years of like I want them to remember this movie like when they're,
Right.
8, 9, 10. Probably around that age is probably what I would wait to show this movie to them if like I had kids right now. And
Mhm.
I do not. That was not an announcement or anything like that. Do not have kids. That's not going to change. Um, so yeah, I think I agree with you on that point. And like, it was hilarious too. I always
Mhm.
love the way that they depict the dad's mind because I'm
Mhm.
like, I feel like that's me, where he's just kind of like, oh yeah. Oh, the game's on. Like or like they're like all watching the game and like all their emotions are like kind of in sync. Because
Mhm.
it's so funny because you can see how like Riley's motions, like when you're a formative kid, your emotions are always like fighting for control. And sometimes as you get older, it can get better. And so
Mhm.
like in the dad's mind, it felt like all of his emotions were just kind of in sync and just like more concerned about like the football game or whatever was going on. It was like, we
Mhm.
didn't hear what she said. Nod. Just nod. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. And I'm like that's something I wouldn't have understood until I got married. Because I'm like, you don't know how many times I do that in a week, even in just a week, where I'm just like, I didn't hear that. Just nod. Nod. Yes. Yes. Great idea.
I
Um,
hope I hope Kate doesn't listen to this episode then.
it's okay. She's not one of our regular listeners. It's okay.
Oh, okay, good.
And yeah, it is just and laughing with everyone in the theater, I feel like that made the experience because like you could hear like the kids laughing at parts, you could hear the dads laughing, you could hear the moms laughing and the wives, and like you could hear like different groups of people that like it connected. I don't think there's a better movie that like connects to almost anybody. Like you don't have to be any age to watch and appreciate this movie. You could be 2 or you could be 90. Like, it really doesn't matter. Anybody, like, I can't even say this is a family movie. This is just an anybody movie.
Mhm.
It's like, I don't have any kids, like I said. And so there's not really a good reason for like me and my wife to go see it. It doesn't really make sense because we like you think it's like a family movie to take your kids to.
Mhm.
But no, it still hit me really hard in theaters. I feel like they,
Mhm.
like I said, the way they depicted the emotions. And I like the way that you could see how anxiety didn't start off. Like most of the time when we think of anxiety, we think of a bad thing. We think of
Mhm.
negativity with it. And because it can bring a lot of negativity. But I think
Mhm.
I love the way they started it as like just kind of like calculating and
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
anxiety almost seemed like they were just like trying to formulate a plan. And you got to slowly watch it get out of control. And then that really helps you understand what anxiety is, because anxiety doesn't start with you at the panic attack. It doesn't
Mhm.
start with you making ridiculous plans for like 10 years in the future, or it doesn't start with you going to like worst case scenarios. It's a gradual process. And we got to see
Mhm.
that throughout the movie, up until the point where she was like, "Hey, you guys, your emotions aren't really helping out. I'm gonna have to bottle you up and throw them away." And I love the
Mhm.
way that they did the bottled up emotions, because like it's such a good like they take so like putting some of those metaphors on screen. It's just is really brilliant on the part of whoever did this movie. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I think all
The
the voice performances were fantastic as well. What were you about to say?
I was gonna say, yeah, the literalization of the metaphors. I think they're pretty cute. Like
Yeah.
they feel like very obvious like gags if you're gonna do a movie like this, existing in a brain. But I would be lying if it didn't have me smiling and chuckling at a lot of them. I
Yeah.
think too for the anxiety part, something I really liked is how a lot of that spiral it can start with a justification. And
Hmm.
so like the first time we see anxiety take over, she was right. Like the anxious preparing like paid off. But
Hmm.
that's the exact justification that then feeds anxiety into, okay, so let me just take over a little bit more and let me
Hmm.
plan a little bit more. And
Gradual
that's what
process.
helps it snowball into something that then no matter what, whether fail or succeed, it just grows like a cancer, and it builds and builds and builds and builds and builds.
Hmm. And like I said, when they got to that camp, and Riley found out that her friends weren't going to be with her in the new school. Like I said, Joy and Amy Poehler, again, another fantastic performance by her as Joy, was more concerned with, like, let's just go to camp, have a good time, everything's gonna work out. That's pretty much my mindset, like all the time. But she wasn't really thinking about like, hey, like this is kind of important. Like you're getting to this part of like building your life, and not everything is gonna be about just having a good time. Which is
Hmm.
why, like in the other movie, she learned that like sadness was kind of important.
Hmm.
And in this movie, she learned how, you can't just like I said, everything's not going to be in a good time. And like for people that have, and like you can, like everyone has a level of anxiety. Like it's not just most people, like there aren't some people that just don't have anxiety. Everyone has some level of anxiety because you have something telling you that you need to do something or prepare for something. You have some level of stress in your life, and that comes with anxiety. The difference is like for some people, it can take over, just like anxiety in the movie took over the console and got rid
Hmm.
of those other emotions. And so, but by the end, you could tell how like, okay, they can try to work together instead of, completely taking over and ending up shutting Riley down. Um,
Right.
which I think was again very powerful and just kind of shows you like the whole point of these movies has always been about balance within your emotions. Like you need every single emotion, but you also need them to be balanced with each other. And I feel like this movie got that message down perfectly, and made a buttload of money while doing it. Like,
Hmm.
and I think it was well worth it. Like, I mean, I liked Deadpool and Wolverine. I wanted it to gross over $1 billion, but I can't say I'm upset that Inside Out 2 was the highest grossing movie of this year. I mean, I think I probably would have preferred if Dune Part 2 hit the same heights as Inside Out 2, just because I think it is a better movie. But I am happy that this one, like the fact that it
Yeah.
grossed $1.65 billion means a lot of people saw this message, and that makes me
Hmm.
happy. And that is weird for me. So I'm like, still like, but like, I'm just happy that that means this many people saw the message, maybe saw it twice with their families. Cause I'm like, this is something like I would say, like, Dune Part 2 is not really something that everyone like needs to see, but I'm like, this is something that
Well,
everybody
well,
needs to see.
well.
Well, let's not go there.
Hold on. Like let's throw that one back a little bit. Um, no, I completely agree. And I think for context, like you are not a huge message and movie kind of viewer. Like
Not
that is
really.
not some
No.
that is more like you sound a bit like me in that regard because I feel like that's what I'm always saying. And so I think it's really, for me, being like your very close friend of yours, your best
Mhm.
friend, and being able to see like, whoa, this really hit you, like, is really, it's really fascinating because viewers, this does not happen often for
Mhm.
King Whale. Like, he does not often hit this level of like resonance and like impactful messaging in film. That's usually not the thing that gravitates him. So
Mhm.
for a movie to hit like this hard, like, that's how you know you got something special. You got King Whale in.
And I think the difference is like my brother and I will talk about it a lot too. The concept of like show, don't tell in a
Mm-hmm.
movie. Like you want to show something, you don't want to tell something. So to
Mm-hmm.
me, when movies have a messages, the things I hate is the pandering, feeling like you're trying to teach me something. That's
Mm-hmm.
telling. You're telling them, hey, here's the message. This is what you need to learn and take away from this movie. That's why I usually don't get down with these kind of like message movies because I hate that. It feels pandering. It's like I'm not in school, not trying to learn a lesson from a movie. But this movie, it didn't tell you the message. It shared it with you. It took you on a journey with Riley, and it's like, see what's going on in her head.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to experience it with it. The way they crafted the storyline, the way they crafted watching everything going on in her head, it wasn't telling you, it was showing you what's happening, and it's sharing a message with you without teaching it to you or forcing it down your throat. It's allowing you to come to your conclusion at the end based upon what happens to Riley and watching what happens in her journey. So, if you do want to make a movie that has a message, watch this one and use that as like a baseline on how to do it. Because to me, this is the right way to do it. Because like you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to. Because yeah, usually message movies like I mean, they're not like I'll watch them occasionally, but like not really. I'll get bored very quickly. And also this one was really funny throughout it, so like that kind of kept me anchored. But I think even without that, I would have been anchored just because it made me invested in Riley's story and what's happening to her. And so yeah, I think this is deservingly. And like I said, it's on like I don't know if it's like my second favorite movie of the year, but I'm like is definitely like my second best experience in the movie theaters this year. And like if I hadn't
Yeah.
seen it so late, because we saw it right before it left theaters, I
Mm-hmm.
probably would have seen it again. Because as I'm talking about it, I want to go see it
I
again.
want to go
But
see it
it's
again.
not in theaters right
It's not
now.
in theaters.
Uh,
I think Disney really captured lightning in a bottle here with just like the visual representation of human emotions. Like,
mhm,
I feel like that is like that concept just at its core is one that I think is like the perfect Disney concept because it's going to do that thing where it feels magical and unique and it feels so perfectly tailor made for kids, but also at the same time, it is tailor made for adults as well and allowing like a seamless connection between them. And so, like, I don't know why I'm as surprised that this was as successful as it was. Maybe it because the biggest movie before this that we thought would really take off was Furiosa, and we saw how poorly Furiosa did, and so maybe that made us a little distrustful of the industry at least this year or
I
something.
know. I was
But
like, when I first found out, I was like, Inside Out 2 is the first billion-dollar hit this year. What?
what
That's crazy. That's ridiculous. And then I saw it and I was like,
the you're that meme of Danny DeVito where he says, "I get it now,"
yes,
from It's
yes,
Always Sunny.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, no, it definitely like once you see it, you will understand why it did what it did. And like you said, just the fact that this many people saw it, like it's very clear that that's why it grossed this much money. Because again, even if you don't, it's not just for people. I think that's another thing they did. It's not just for people with anxiety as well. Like it's not just for them to see it because like it it still appeals to people that don't have anxiety that badly because again everyone has it, it's just different levels of how bad it is. And so like if you're someone that doesn't, you can still watch it and understand what's going on and be like, wow, that's crazy, and like it still feels like it's connected to you because
Mhm.
it doesn't like leave you out. And then anyone that has it can be like, yeah, see, that's what. And most people like most chances are somebody who has um bad anxiety. Like if you know
Mhm.
anybody, you probably do because it affects a lot of people, you know.
It's very common.
It's
And
very
if you
common.
don't, maybe ask because it's very possible that you do and you just maybe don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you think you don't know anybody that has it, you just they haven't told you. Like, because
Hmm.
there's, like I said, everyone. And if you're listening to this podcast right now, you know someone that has it. Because, like I said, Ty's mentioned that he's has it before. Um,
Hmm.
and I'm like, the only thing I can relate to it is like I have really bad claustrophobia. And I remember when I had to get an MRI for epilepsy. And there's been a couple of times where like I've gotten like really, really worried. Um, but as I've grown up, it's just been something that I don't really feel anymore as an adult.
Hmm.
But you could just see how, like I said, how it took over. Like even seeing it take over Riley, like took me back to some of my like high school and college years where, things would happen and you think it's like the end of the world and everything's going to fall apart. And like looking
Yeah.
back, you're like, that was not even close to being a big deal. Like now that we're paying
Yes.
like taxes and bills and like, trying to live, it's like, oh wow, I really wasn't really need to be worried about that.
Oh my God, that's such a
But
good point because you're so right.
hmm
The movie was so great at capturing like the melodrama of being a
hmm
teenager for the first time, where like everything is like the most like cataclysmic world-ending event, and it's just like Taylor didn't sit with me at lunch today. But in the
feels
moment,
like it.
it
Yeah.
feels
Yeah.
like your
No, I
world is
remember.
crumbling, and this movie really captures that so well because again the stakes of the movie are just my friends are going to a different school, and from the eyes of a of a now a very early pubescent teenager, that is the most awful thing you could experience. And I
The world is
love
ending. Yeah.
that it played it and it didn't use it as like a punching bag. It didn't punch down to say
hmm
like, look at this, doesn't this kid know, like like
Yeah.
it
It
gets,
didn't
it
make us.
obviously gets better, but
Yeah.
that's not the point.
Yeah.
It's we're here, and how do you deal with that there? And I think the
hmm
principles of that are timeless and affect everyone at any age group for dealing with those emotions.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I am super happy that I saw it in theaters. If you haven't, please try to do so. I mean, if there's dollar theaters nearby you, I thoroughly recommend it. When we get to our end of the year movies, like I know this is gonna be in my top five, and I'm gonna have a hard time not making this as number two, unless something really fantastic comes out between now and then. It's gonna be really hard for this to not be number two. So yeah, tell us your thoughts about Inside Out 2 if you've already seen it. If you're wanting them to do a third one or anything like that. If you have another movie that you recommended, I wish we had a little bit more time because then we would have talked about the Sonic the Hedgehog 3 trailer a little bit that just came out and debuted Keanu Reeves as Shadow. So I'm just drop that nugget in there so that way, you'll check back again because hopefully we'll cover that
Because we're
pretty
absolutely going to
soon.
cover that.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that trailer looked fun. And we saw Sonic the Hedgehog 2 together, so that's kind of what makes it like so
So
special.
we have to see Sonic the Hedgehog 3 together.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So yeah, let us know your thoughts about this movie
Mhm.
and if you haven't seen it, please go see it.
Please do.
All right, guys. Until next time.